Good evening, everybody. My name is Kim Vitello. I'm the Education Director here at the Westport River Watershed Alliance. Thank you all for coming. I want to give you all a warm welcome, and for those of you that are joining us online, welcome also. And now, the reason you're all here, I am very excited to introduce Anne DiMonti. She has 30 years of experience in environmental education and marine sciences, and that whole time, I feel like I've known her the whole time.
I think you have, just about.
She has been a fierce advocate for whales, and an amazing educator about them and making sure the community knows how important they are and ways that we can work to protect them. She has a very amazing career, but she served for how many years at Audubon?
28.
28 years at Audubon, and her last position there was as director of the Nature Center and Aquarium in Bristol, Rhode Island. She also spent 10 years on the board of the Rhode Island Natural History Survey as on the board of directors. And then she developed and directed collaborations with marine and maritime organizations, government offices, universities, and NGOs to advance conservation efforts. Some of these include the North Atlantic Right Whale Consortium and the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committees at both Roger Williams University and the University of Rhode Island. She spearheaded Sharing the Seas, safe boating for sailors and whales to educate and empower mariners to make choices that lead to better ocean conservation and reduce marine mammals ship strikes. And in 2014, she was selected to be a Mystic Seaport 38th Voyager, so she was able to travel aboard the historic whaling ship, the Charles W. Morgan, as a visiting scientist. Today, Anne is joining us as the Protecting Ocean Wildlife Program Manager for Sustainable's Fisheries Partnership. Her work focuses on reducing marine mammal entanglements and pot trap fishing gear and generating beneficial conservation solutions for both marine mammals and the fishing industry. So please help me give her a very
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me this afternoon. I know it's a tough time with dinner time, so I appreciate you all here. Just let me know if you can't hear me at any point, and I think we'll get a microphone, but I'm Italian and I'm loud, so you should be able to hear me. So yes, my name's Anne DiMonti, and up until July of this past year, I was with the Audubon Society of Rhode Island as their director of their Nature Center and Aquarium in Bristol, Rhode Island, as Kim mentioned. I'm very glad I'm doing this talk now because Dr. Charles Clarkson, who also works for the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, those are big shoes to fill, so I'm glad I'm before him. So you will have a wonderful talk if you don't know Dr. Clarkson. He did amazing things and was an amazing colleague of mine when I was at the Audubon Society. But I have switched roles, and I am now with a new organization called Sustainable Fisheries Partnership. And as Kim said, I have been in the marine mammal work or marine conservation work for over 30 years, and I had never heard of this organization. So I'm guessing you folks probably haven't heard of it either? Yeah, no. In fact, when this position came up, I called a colleague of mine at Whale and Dolphin Conservation, and I said, have you heard of this organization? And she's like, actually, I have, because they just called me a few months ago to work on a project. So one thing led to another. So what is it? What is Sustainable Fisheries Partnership? We abbreviate that to SFP. So you'll hear me say SFP. So we're actually a global, nonprofit, non-governmental NGO, organization, or NGO. We do not have a main office. If you go on our website and Google us, you're going to see the address for Honolulu, Hawaii, and you would think, ooh, nice. But no, there's actually nobody there. The only reason there's an address there is because our executive director is in Hawaii, so that's where our home base is. But we're all global, we're international. We have staff all over the world, including, obviously, a lot of us are here on the East Coast of the United States. So, all right. So at FSP, our main mission is that we believe that everyone should have accessible to seafood that is produced sustainably. And our organization is only about 20 years old, so it's a relatively new organization. But the main mission, and this is kind of wordy, is to bring industry. So when we say industry, we mean the people that are buying your seafood. So Stop and Shop, Aldi's, Walmart, Publix if you're down south, Tesco, all of the big seafood suppliers and buyers. We are working with them, nonprofit NGOs, the government, fishers, so fishermen themselves, scientists and academics, bringing them all together to find sustainable seafood solutions so that the seafood you buy is caught and maintained sustainably, both here in the United States and around the world. So Chile, Indonesia, Europe, all around the world. Okay. And we work to solve major challenges, so things like bycatch, entanglement, and issues like that, to figure out how that overuse and overstock of seafood, including aquaculture, and how that can come sustainably and how we can all work together. So the question is, what does that have to do with whales? And how is a marine mammologist like myself, who's been studying whales all my life, end up with an organization who mostly looks at how seafood can be caught and sustainably? And it all goes back to whales' importance to the oceans. Okay, whales are the key to the health of the ocean. And that's primarily, when you think about it, the ocean, as I think you all know, produces about 50% of the air that we breathe is produced on the ocean. And the whales play a part of that, primarily thanks to the things that they feed, so which is phytoplanktons. And they do that through pooping. So phytoplankton is fed by whale poop and whale pee as well. So we're going to talk about the poop loop to start. Okay, so basically, and it's funny, I just read an article today that said that they believe fin whales pee about 250 gallons a day. Which is a fact I had not heard about, compared to humans, which is a half a gallon a day. So this is important because we're talking about poo and pee a little bit. But basically, whales poop. This is a dolphin. Everybody poops, right? And that feeds the phytoplankton in the ocean. So that's basically like fertilizing your garden, right? Then the zooplankton, which are the larger animals, feed on that. And before you know it, you're starting this loop in the ocean, okay, which feeds the entire ocean. In addition to that, the whales actually help with removing carbon from the atmosphere and help with climate change. It's actually a very complicated process, which I'm not going to get into today because we don't have a lot of time. But basically, whales store carbon within their body. We all do. And because of whales' mass, when they die and they sink to the bottom of the ocean, that actually stores carbon into the bottom of the ocean. So they have played a very important role. So without the whales, they're not going to do the poop. They're not going to sustain the ocean. And later on, you're not going to get the seafood and the fishes that that we benefit from. Okay, so as Kim mentioned, I had a very rare opportunity. In 2014, I was invited as one of 79 scientists to travel on an extraordinary journey aboard the Charles W. Morgan. Has anyone heard the Charles W. Morgan? A few hands going there. If you've ever been to Mystic Seaport, you have seen the Morgan. Did anyone see her when she was traveling and came to New Bedford? Yeah, okay, so some of you have been here. And it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's still one of the greatest things to me that ever happened as a marine mammal scientist, to have this opportunity to travel on a whaling ship. So for those of you who may know a little bit about the Morgan or may not, I'm going to talk a little bit about that because we're going to take a step back in time. Because what I'd like to do is compare historical whaling and its effect that it had on whales and what's happening today, and see if we can make that connection. Okay, so the Charles W. Morgan herself, she's the last of the American whaling fleet that at one time had about 2,700 vessels. So it was a big industry at that time. And she had an 80-year career that started in 1841 and ended in 1921. And that was 37 voyages that she went on, not including the one in 2014, which is called the 38th voyage. Okay. She is the oldest commercial ship still afloat. There is the U.S. Constitution, but that's considered a military vessel, so it's a little bit in a different class. And she's the only surviving whale ship left. Okay. She is listed as a historical landmark, and for any of you sailors or boaters out there and are curious, she's 106 feet, 11 inches long on deck with a beam width of 27 feet. So she's a good-sized vessel. Okay. And this is a fact I'd like you guys to just sort of put to the back of your mind. During her 80 years at sea, she brought in just under 55,000 barrels of whale oil and just under 152,000 pounds of whale bone, or what's called baleen, and other products. Okay. So this 38th voyage that she took in 2014, this is the pattern. She left Mystic Seaport, and she traveled, you can see the line of green that she traveled up. She went to Provincetown and then to Boston. I was on the Provincetown Lake, and then the red line shows her coming back and back to Mystic. If you go to visit her now or want to go visit her now, I'm going to tell you she's in dry dock right now at Mystic Seaport. You can see her in dry dock, but they just put her in dry dock to do some repairs. By the way, this is a $5 million renovation they did to put her to sea for this voyage. Okay. So what does this voyage teach us? What was the whole purpose of doing this whole thing? Okay. Because this vessel has remained almost completely unchanged since 1841, it gave us the opportunity to really take a step back in time and look at what's happened before us and how that shaped our understanding of the marine systems today. Most of what we as marine scientists know today about whales came from these old whalers. These were the guys who were on the ships. They took in these whales. They had the carcasses basically fresh. I hate to say this. And they kept wonderful records, not only of the whales that they caught, but on ocean currents, atmospheres. They had all this data that was in logs, weather, that we are still using today. So this was an incredible opportunity, and I was very blessed to have been there. This is one of the original Morgan crews in the top picture, and this was the crew from the most recent 38th voyage. Okay. So if we think back to when the Morgan was on her heyday in the 19th century, we didn't have any recognition at that time that the ocean had any limits, right? The ocean was thought to be boundless. It was this massive area, and we could use it as we saw fit, right? For fishing and shipping and trade, industry, of course, whaling, obviously, and culture. Interesting enough, back then, as we all know, there was no internet, there was no YouTube, there was no telephone, nothing like that. If you wanted to know what was going on in the world, you waited for these mariners to come back. And they brought back things from all over the world, all these rare things from cultures and such as Africa and Hawaii and the Arctic, and they brought back all of this information. So they were the pipeline, they were the internet of their time, if you think about it. Okay. And of course, the 19th century did have an impact on whale populations. Obviously, they were hunting whales. And on average, anywhere between 16 to 20 whales were taken per voyage, depending on the success of the trip. Okay. But at that time, whales were essential, so to speak. They gave us light to light houses and streets, and also lubricate machinery. And their bones and their baleen, which is the fringe that hangs from their mouth, was used to make household goods that we think of plastics today. So things like hairbrushes, buggy whips, umbrella stays, women's corsets, things like pie crust makers and rolling pins and all kinds of things like that were used from whalebone. Now, of course, then they discovered plastics. But in those days, whalebone was used, or baleen. And again, the number of whales caught really depended on a lot of things. It was not a guarantee that you were going to catch anything. So a lot of it had to do with skill and just dumb luck of the crew. I hate to say it, but how long the boat was out there. Was it a 1-year voyage or was it a 5-year voyage? How far did the boat travel? Did she go to the Azores or did she go around the world? It all depended. And the Morgan was actually considered a very lucky ship. Obviously, she's been around for more than 80 years. But in her first voyage, which was just over 3 years, she killed and tried out, or what's called processed, about 70 whales. And you might think, oh my God, 70 whales. But again, I want you to keep that number in mind along with the last figure we looked at, because we're going to compare it to what we're looking at today. Okay. So today we understand that species can be finite. We understand the ocean has limits. This is something we know. We're knowledgeable today about that. But Has anything really changed since the Morgan set sail in 1841? And that's what we're here to think about today and talk about today. Are we having the same effect on the population in the ocean today that they did in the 19th century? And even if you really think about it, are we still whaling? And are we having even a greater effect or the same effect on the environment, if you think about it, than they did back then? We're going to be talking a lot about this whale right here. This is a North Atlantic right whale that these folks are standing in front of. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. All right. So today, whales have a lot of threats, unfortunately. And we're going to flip through them kind of quickly. So entanglement is one. Again, this is a North Atlantic right whale. We're going to be talking a lot. And it's a little bit hard to see in this picture. You're going to see some others. This whale is what we call a bonnet wrap, a wrap around its top of its head with some fishing gear. This is another whale which has gill net or gill gear around its tail. Okay. The other thing that whales deal with is ship strike and increased boating traffic. Again, this is a North Atlantic right whale. You're going to see the scar marks from a large propeller from a large boat. I'm going to warn you, the next picture is a little disturbing. This is a whale that was slashed open by a large ship. Marine trash and ghost gear is another big one. Ghost gear is gear that is abandoned at sea. Most of the time it's an accident. Fishers lose gear. Unfortunately, they don't want to lose gear, but sometimes that happens. This is a very rare case. This is a sei whale that was actually found down in the mid-Atlantic, way like in an estuary. And they didn't know what killed it, and they finally did a full necropsy. And when they got down to it, what they found was this piece of a DVD case. Here's a full DVD case, so you can see the piece of it. It acted like a knife once it got into the whale's stomach and cut up the inside of the whale's stomach, and actually killed the 65-foot animal. So when you think about, Kim mentioned about doing a beach cleanup, you might not think about this little piece of plastic like having any effect, but obviously it had a big effect in this case. All kinds of pollutants are in the, so we can go on for hours about pollutants, but habitat destruction, competition for natural resources. They're fighting, they're kind of fighting with us, right, for the same resources. That's what sustainable fisheries does. We try to figure out how we can mitigate that and all work together to have sustainable caught fish. And of course, climate change. Okay, but we are going to talk about ship strike and entanglement, because those are the two biggest threats to whales and most large marine, what we call endangered, threatened, and protected species. So that's like large turtles, sharks, those endangered animals, seabirds, large seabirds. Okay, so and again, the North Atlantic right whale, we're going to use this as a poster child for today's talk. But this represents all whale species. And 85% of all North Atlantic right whales have scars from entanglement and ship strike, both. Again, this is a humpback whale. You can see this marking that it was hit by a ship. Again, here's that image of the North Atlantic right whale. This is Kingfisher. He's a North Atlantic right whale. He's got this terrible, what we call flipper wrap. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And again, here's another image of a North Atlantic right whale. Very common for them to get tangled this way. The rope goes over their head, what's called the bonnet, and gets stuck in between their mouth. And so this is unfortunately a very common way for them. And you can see the line is starting to go into the top of the whale's head. Oh, okay, move these slides around. Good, sorry. So, and we're going to go back a little bit. So this, again, we're talking about North Atlantic right whales because we're going to use this as a poster child. The North Atlantic right whale is one of the most endangered large whales in the world. And we're fortunate here because we're part of their habitat. They come up, they're actually this way right now. They're migrating through here. And currently there are about 370 North Atlantic right whales left. And if you'll notice, this number says 2023. And that's because we're always a year behind in the population status. What's going to happen is the scientists, my colleagues that are in the field, are calculating all the data from last year's 2024, which will be produced and distributed sometime this year, probably in the summer, and then we'll get a new population update. So we're always slightly behind in the population updates. But you can see how this population has gone up and down, but never really gotten above that, about 500 animals. And this primarily is because these animals, unfortunately, hug the east coast of the United States. We'll show you where in a minute. And so they are in the line with shipping traffic and fishing traffic. So they're just in the wrong place, always at the wrong time. And if you look here, you'll see unusual mortality event. So this is what scientists term the UME, which is a fancy way of saying how many whales are dying. The unusual mortality event, and this is ranging from 2017 to today. And what you see is some data here. So this, again, we're just using North Atlantic right whales as an example. But if you go onto the NOAA website and you Google UME, you'll see it for all species of whales. But basically, we know so far that during this time where 41 North Atlantic right whales have been killed. Again, mostly you can see here why they were killed. Mostly entanglements, vessel strikes. Some are unknown. Usually those unknowns are because the animal is dead and floating at sea and they can't take it in or find out. Same thing for not examined. We know an animal's been dead. We see it floating. They can't get to it. Or prenatal death. That means that it was a stillbirth of some kind. Seriously injured means that we know this animal is out there. We know it's sick. It's got maybe a wrap on it. It's been hit by a ship. We're watching it. We know it's out there. And seriously injured usually means we know it's going to die at some point. There's no coming back. 71 is in poor health. 71 animals are in poor health. That means, again, we're watching them. We know they're in poor health. They might be thin, and we might know if they've been entangled or ship strike, but they're not to the point of dying yet, but we're watching them. So if you look right now, in this time frame, 151 just North Atlantic right whales are in this range. Think back again to your Morgan numbers. Okay? If we go back to what we said with the Morgan, during her first 3-year voyage, she killed about 70 whales, and that was over 3 years, all over the world, all species. So if you look and so this is about a 8-year period. So this actually equals out to about the same amount of whales either killed that was done in the 19th century during the historical whaling area. So we're at about the same numbers, if not worse. And I should say, these are ones we know. A lot of whales die at sea and sink to the bottom of the ocean. We never know. Okay. Or we know whales are sick and injured, or we know they're carrying gear and we lose them and we never see them again and we just assume they're dead, but we don't know that for a fact. Okay, so I'm going to flip again a little bit.
Just before you
please.
Point out that in seriously injured and injured in poor health, the great majority there is entanglement.
Correct.
Because it's small print.
It is. So the great majority of them is entanglements in gear. Correct. Yes. Ship strike, I hate to say it, usually kills a whale instantly. It's very rare that whales, especially if they're hit by a large ship, survive. So when you're talking about seriously injured or in poor health, it's because usually they're carrying gear. Speaking of carrying gear, I'm going back to kingfisher. So you saw that wrap on kingfisher's arm earlier. And when kingfisher finally passed away, this was during its necropsy. He came floated to shore, and this was the wrap around his flipper. When a necropsy is an animal autopsy, and when that was done, we found this. This is the bones in his flipper, and you can see the rope just wore away at that. That animal, kingfisher, lived with that wrap, I think it was 2 or 3 years he carried that wrap. So, and because of where the entanglement was, they really couldn't do it what's called a disentanglement, get in there and try to cut it away because it was so tight to his flipper. So let's talk, And then it's not only these large animals I want to know, it's the small animals as well. This is a dolphin in Florida. It's got a plastic bag on its dorsal fin. There's actually a funny story, just checking my time, that there's this funny story of a dolphin who got entangled in a man's bathing suit in Florida. I know this is really, you got to laugh a little bit, but it caused a disentanglement effort. They had to go out and find the dolphin because the bathing suit was actually choking this dolphin. So they get into all kinds of trouble. Okay. When we're talking about ship strike, this is Infinity and her calf. This was 3 years ago now. And this was in the calving grounds in Florida. And this is about time. She's a 55-foot sports fishing vessel. You can see she's sinking, and that's because she hit Infinity and her calf. She killed the calf immediately. The calf was only a few weeks old, and we never saw the mother again. So our assumption is the mother was also killed. Okay, so what's the solution? What can we do here? How can we stop whaling? All right. So one of the ways we need to stop is to understand where they're going, what they're doing, and how they're acting. So one of the key things is to understand where they're traveling. So we know for the most part they spend the summers with us, and then in the winter they go down to Florida and the Caribbean to have their calves and breed. So we know they have this up and down migration pattern, up and down the east coast of the United States. Same thing on the west coast. They do the same thing on the west coast as well. With that said, some of the smaller whales, the dolphins and the toothed whales, they tend to not migrate as far. They tend to be residential and stay around. Okay. And how do we know where they're going? Well, we have all kinds of wonderful scientists and colleagues out there who are doing things like acoustic monitoring. This is actually your Mass Department of Marine Fisheries. This is a recent picture of them putting an acoustic monitor into the water. So this listens for whales in the area. It's called real-time and passive. That means they can either listen real-time as it's happening, or they can record the data and listen later. And then there's underwater drones, and then the old-fashioned look with your eyes. People in planes going up and down the coast and in the area, and on boats. So that's how we know where they're going, or we try to know where they're going. All right. And then once you have all this data, you have to put it someplace. So this is Whale Map, and anyone can go on this website and look at this. It's called whalemap.org, and all the data is put in here, and you can see where the whales are, and you can kind of play with this and change the settings and change how you want to look at it and what whales you want to look at, and it'll pop up and it'll give you all kinds of data. If you're a sailor, this is a good thing to know because you can use this when you go out. So speaking of sailing, I am a longtime sailor, and as Kim mentioned in the beginning, I worked a lot with ship strike issues before going to Sustainable Fisheries Partnership. And so we're going to talk about some solutions that might solve the ship strike problem. Okay. So again, it's understanding where these animals are. And if you look again at North Atlantic right whales, they hug the coast. They're actually called the urban whale because they hug the coast so closely. And they're traveling most of the migration route that sailors and boaters and mariners travel, okay, up and down the coast. Okay. So knowing this and using all the tools I talked about before, we can kind of figure out where they're going and what time of year. So we know again in the spring, in the winter, they're down here having their babies, and now they're traveling up this way, and they're here from about April 1st, which they are, until about July 31st, and then they're going to go up to Canada. So this helps us, and we call this the seasonal management areas because we know where they're going to be. So then we take that information and we use all the data that we have and we overlay it with something called a dynamic management area. So that means that we know where they usually are going, and then when the acoustic buoys and the aerial survey people see the whales, they say, oh, the whales are definitely here where we're expecting them to be. And when that happens, you get the seasonal management area and the dynamic management area overlaying each other. And then the government calls out a slow zone alert. Okay, so what happens then is that they send out a notice to all mariners that say whales are in the area and you need to slow down to 10 knots. And they'll get that information and they'll drop to 10 knots. It's mandatory for vessels over 65 feet. For vessels under 65 feet, it's voluntary. The government tried to actually, there was a legislation to try to increase that to 35 feet or over, but unfortunately with the current administration that was wiped out. But 65 feet is currently standing. We don't know, that might be wiped out as well. But you can go on the NOAA.gov website and you can sign up for this. I encourage you, if you're a sailor or a boater, to do this. You sign up, and what's going to happen, you just put your email, your phone number in, and then you'll get an alert. This is an older alert, but I just got one of these today. And it'll tell you that a whale's been seen in your area and all the information. So it's an easy, easy thing.
Is that alert a text, or does that come over the digital?
It's either can be text or email, however you want to see it. For large ship mariners, you can get it on your satellite or Starlink, or any of those devices.
Is the thinking at 10 knots, the whale has a much better chance to divert from?
Opposite. At 10 knots, the vessel has a much better time of seeing the whale and stopping.
Okay.
Yeah. Whales.
Or in
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah. Whales are like deer in the road. They are not going to say, oh my goodness, there's a car, I have to get out of the way. Or, or there's a boat, I have to get out of the way. They're going on their way. They're not going to avoid you. It's up to the mariners to avoid them. And I hear that a lot from sailors. They're like, well, I thought the whale would see me. Well, a whale sees you, but he doesn't know to get out of your way. It's the same thing like, if you're driving down the highway and there's a deer standing in the middle of the road, you're not going to keep driving thinking, the deer's going to, you're going to stop, right? So it's the same mentality. Okay, entanglement. So how do we solve that problem? So there's a few things. This is an image by a colleague of mine at Center for Coastal Studies, Scott Landry. He showed this drawing of how right whales typically tangle themselves. And this is the main gear that they're entangling themselves in, which is lobster and crab pots. Okay, so the lobster pot's on the bottom, the buoy at the top, and the whale kind of gets entangled in that gear. So how do we solve this issue? And I don't expect you to read this whole thing. This is a statement from the Department of Massachusetts Marine Fisheries. But basically, one of the ways they do this is that they have closed areas. So when whales are in these areas, and they know whales are coming, which is right now, these zones are closed. That means if you are a lobster fisherman or a crab fisherman, you cannot fish in any of these areas where they know whales are going. And that's going to last until April 30th or until the whales leave. And then there can be a quick one. So if suddenly there's a group of whales in an area, there was just a group of whales off Jeffreys Ledge, 70 North Atlantic right whales were off of Jeffreys Ledge, where a lot of Maine lobstermen go. The government called out an alert, and all those Maine lobstermen had to get their gear out of the water and back to shore. So when that happened. So fishermen do not love this, and I'm sure you can imagine why, right? Okay, so we're coming up with a new thing called on-demand or ropeless fishing. On-demand or ropeless fishing is a way to keep the buoy line, traditional buoy line, at the bottom of the ocean with the lobster traps until it is needed. So I'm going to show you a video in a minute. Hopefully it's going to work. So basically, this main line is the main thing that entangles whales. So if we take that line out of the water and put it at the bottom of the ocean, we're reducing the ability for the whale to entangle in it. So what'll happen, and there's different versions and different technology out there, but basically what happens is fishermen drop their gear, everything goes down to the bottom, then the fisherman comes along, he has a device on his vessel, he knows the area that he put his gear in, he triggers on either on a cell phone or on a laptop or on an iPad for the buoy to come up to the surface. He triggers it. The buoy then pops up either through what's called a lift bag or on a spool, and the buoy will come to the surface, and then the fisherman can fish it up. He resets it and drops everything back down to the ocean. So I have a video of this, so let's see hopefully if it will work. Okay. Okay. Kim, do I just?
Use the cursor to hit the little.
Oh, use the cursor. Got it. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so you're seeing the lobster pots go over. They go over first. And here's the on-demand unit. So the buoys that have all the rope and everything, that's a separate basket. So it goes down. So this is what the lobsterman will see on his iPad. He'll set it to release. It's going to release. Buoy pops up. And then the fishers will pull it up just like they would normally do any of their gear. They will reset, and depending on how the gear, it depends on how long it takes them to reset. These devices also have what's called smart buoys on them, so the fishers will know if the gear is moving, if it's been stolen, if it's been moved by a storm or anything like that. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. So one of the things that the fishers are most concerned about is this is expensive, right? It's new technology, so it's expensive. So to solve that problem, we've developed lending gear libraries. Okay. And one of the most popular ones is right here at Woods Hole, just outside of Woods Hole, at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. And this is a picture of the Science Center. So basically, it's a library for ocean gear or fishing gear. So fishermen can do a quick training. They come along and there's no charge. They can borrow all this gear, use it for a season. They give it back to the Northeast Fisheries Science Center. The Northeast Science Center, they maintain it, they clean it, they make sure it's working, and then they give it back to the fishers. There's no charge for that. And at SFP, we're actually working with Publix. Publix is actually buying and promoting some of this. So that's one of the ways we're connecting at SFP, my organization, to help with this. There's also a similar library in Canada called Canfish, again, and as well as in Maine, at the Maine Department of Marine Affairs, or Maine DMR. And I'm proud to say that SFP has been involved with all this. We get industry like Publix and some of the other ones, large retailers, they want to help. So they're actually giving money to the gear library so they can buy gear and give it to the fishermen. There's also another gear library in California as well. Okay. So you will then be able, eventually, to be able to buy lobster and crab from these on-demand products.
How soon do you think it will be available?
So that's a great question. So a lot of this is still called experimental fishing. So they're using this to see how to fish, what to fish. And so when that happens and there's the government does not allow then those fishers to sell to the public. But this is a new technology that's only been really going hard for about 5 to 7 years. So we're predicting that within the next couple of years, you're going to start to see this. The thing to do is to let folks know that you want to buy this. So these big seafood suppliers, and they're anxious to start to get this going. They want to support this. So as soon as we figure out all the chain of commands, there's a lot of steps, I think you're going to see this within the next couple of years. I think you're going to be able to buy. Like I said, if you've been to Disney, you've probably already eaten crab that's been caught this way. So, and a lot of the smaller industry, a lot of this crab too is going to small markets like Luke's Lobster. I don't know if anyone's ever been to Luke's Lobster. They're doing that. So, but okay, so we're almost done. I've just got a couple more slides. Okay, so we're into the big elephant in the room. And you notice I really didn't talk about this, and that's because wind farms has become a very politically charged topic. And unfortunately, whales are being used to promote and push other agendas to do with wind farms. I can tell you, and been in this field a long time, I work with colleagues in all realms, we have absolutely no evidence that wind farms are killing whales. For those people who are so concerned about whales dying, if they were that concerned, they would worry about helping with entanglement and ship strike, because we know that is killing these animals. A lot of these, some people are saying, well, I'm seeing more whales. You see them more on the news. You're seeing them more. We're not seeing them more. I can just tell you that it's being politicized more. And additionally, these animals are slightly changing their dynamics because of climate change, so they're moving in different directions. We don't know what the effect of wind farms is going to be on the environment itself. Anything. There are studies being done on how fish are moving, how lobsters are moving, what's happening to ocean currents, what's happening to whales. All of that study is being done now. Wind farms are new. This is a technology we are just learning about. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to come to you in 10 or 15 years from now and have a different conversation with you. But I can tell you right now, if you're worried about whales and you want to help whales, put your effort into trying to talk about ship strike and entanglement. Okay, because those are, if you're a sailor, you can do a lot. You can get out there, you can watch for whales. I'm going to show you some things you can do. So I'm asking you, like, and I know it's politically charged, and some of you are going to leave here, and I've talked to some people that no matter what I say to them, wind farms are killing whales, and that's the end of it, and I believe that, and that's it. If that's your belief, I can't stop you. But as a scientist who's been in this field for 30 years, I am telling you we have no current evidence. Okay? So when I say this, look for trusted resources when you're questioning this. There's so many folks out there. These are all trusted organizations that you know you can get information from. And some of the information can go right to your phone. This is, or on your computer. This is Whale Alert. You can download this to your phone. You can know where whales are. It's free. You can know where they are. You can know all about them, sightings of them, information. You can even report if you see a sick whale. Okay, and this is right on your phone. It goes to the trusted resource, and you can have this information at your fingers. Whale Alert, and it's a free app. It's a lot of fun, especially if you're a sailor or a mariner. This is very important because it does show you the slow zones and the seasonal management areas. Okay. And I just want to know, if you do see a dead whale, if you do see an animal that's in distress, marine mammal, seal, anything like that, the thing to do is call NOAA. If you're on the water, if you're a sailor or a boater, hail Coast Guard. And just some points, be ready to describe what you see. If you can take some video or a picture, mark your locations, know where you are. Maintain a safe distance. If possible, stay with the animal until authorities arrive. Do not attempt to touch the animal or disentanglement. It can be a very dangerous thing to do, to touch this animal, or you can do more harm than good. Okay, so as we look ahead, we talked about the Morgan at the very beginning, and she's the last great lady of her time, and she's an ambassador for change, and that's the hope. But the question is, she's been around for over 100 years. 100 years from now, what are people going to think of what we're doing? We talk about whaling, oh my gosh, 19th century whaling, but if you think about it, we're having a greater impact now than those old whalers did. Okay. And the mission of Sustainable Fisheries is to find this balance. We need the ocean. I don't want to stop eating fish. I don't want to stop eating lobster. I love it. So how can we do it resourcefully and sustainably and work together? And we got to think about our legacy as we move forward. Okay. And that's it. So thank you. I'm happy to answer questions. So thank you.